The sun rises over Hyrule Field and something extraordinary happens. Not just a pretty visual effect, but an entire world comes alive with secrets most players never discovered. Ocarina of Time's day and night cycle wasn't just revolutionary for 1998, it was a masterclass in environmental storytelling that hid some of the most brilliant design choices in gaming history. And today, we're uncovering every single detail you missed. When Nintendo released The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time in November 1998, players were blown away by the three-dimensional world of Hyrule. But here's what most people didn't realize at the time. The game's day and night system was doing something far more sophisticated than simply changing the skybox. This wasn't just about making the world look pretty, it was about creating a living, breathing kingdom where time actually mattered. Let's start with the foundation. Ocarina of Time introduced a 12-minute cycle that represented a full 24-hour day in Hyrule. 12 minutes! That meant players experienced 2 complete day and night cycles every single real-world hour they played. But why this specific timing? The developers at Nintendo needed to balance immersion with gameplay flow. Make it too long and players would get frustrated waiting for specific events. Make it too short and the world would feel frantic and unrealistic. 12 minutes was the sweet spot, long enough to feel meaningful, short enough to keep things moving. But the genius goes deeper. The Song of Time wasn't just a tool for solving puzzles, it was the first time a Zelda game gave players direct control over the flow of time itself. Playing those 6 notes on Ocarina didn't just open doors or move blocks, it fundamentally changed how players interacted with Hyrule's world state. This was groundbreaking stuff, especially for the late 90s. Most games treated time as either completely static or as a one-way countdown. Ocarina of Time said, what if the player could manipulate time as a core mechanic? Now here's where things get fascinating. The developers didn't just slap a day-night cycle into the game and call it done. No, they meticulously designed every aspect of how light and shadow would tell a story. Think about the thematic weight of light versus darkness in this game. The golden goddesses, Din, Nehru, and Ferora, created the world through their divine power, establishing order and balance. The Triforce represented that balance. But what happens when Ganondorf claims the Triforce of power? Darkness spreads, and the day-night cycle became a constant, subtle reminder of this eternal struggle. Watch what happens in Kakariko Village as evening approaches. The warm afternoon light gradually shifts to cooler tones. Shadows lengthen across the pathways. The graveyard, already eerie during the day, takes on an entirely different atmosphere. Those tombstones that seemed merely somber in daylight, at night they become genuinely unsettling. The game's lighting engine, incredibly advanced for its time, used carefully calibrated color palettes to evoke specific emotions. During the day, Kakariko Village feels safe, welcoming, even peaceful. The chickens roam freely, the construction workers hammer away at the unfinished buildings, and everything feels normal. But when darkness falls, everything changes. The drawbridge rises, sealing the town completely. Any player caught outside must wait until morning or find another way to pass the time. Why did Nintendo implement this? On the surface, it seems like a limitation, and many players found it frustrating. But look deeper, and you'll see the brilliance. By restricting access to Castle Town at night, the developers created a sense of realism and consequence. Medieval towns really did close their gates after dark for protection. More importantly, this design choice forced players to plan their activities, to think about time management. Do you have enough daylight left to complete your business in town? Should you play the sun's song to change the time? These decisions added strategic depth to what could have been simple exploration. And here's a detail most players never consciously noticed. The quality of light inside Castle Town changes throughout the day. Morning light has a cool, bluish quality as it filters through the streets. Midday brings warm, golden illumination. Afternoon light becomes more amber and orange. These subtle shifts in color temperature were achieved through careful manipulation of the Nintendo 64's limited lighting capabilities. The developers couldn't create realistic dynamic lighting like modern games, so they pre-calculated different lighting scenarios and smoothly transitioned between them. But the real magic of Ocarina of Time's day-night system reveals itself in the NPC routines. This is where the game transcended simple visual changes and created something genuinely special. a world where characters had lives. Take the running man who circles Hyrule Field endlessly. Most players encountered him once or twice and moved on, but track his movements carefully and you'll discover he follows a precise schedule. He appears in different locations at different times, always running his route with determined purpose. Why? The game never explicitly tells you, but this simple detail makes him feel real, like he exists whether you're watching or not. The guards in Castle Town follow patrol routes that change between day and night shifts. During the day, they stand at specific posts, alert and ready. At night, different guards take over, and their patrol patterns adjust to cover the darkened streets more carefully. Players who pay attention can use these patterns to their advantage when sneaking through certain areas. In Kakariko Village, the carpenter's son only appears during specific hours. Miss his window and you'll have to wait for the next day cycle. Same with the guard standing by the Death Mountain Trail. His dialogue changes depending on whether you speak to him in morning, afternoon, or evening. These small touches created the impression that NPCs weren't just waiting for Link to interact with them. They had routines, schedules, lives that continued independent of the player's actions. The Skulltula houses provide another brilliant example. The cursed family members are trapped as half-spider creatures, but their behavior and dialogue shift subtly based on the time of day. During daylight hours, they seem more resigned to their fate, more hopeless. At night, there's an undercurrent of fear and desperation in their words. This wasn't achieved through elaborate scripting, just careful attention to dialogue and timing that enhanced the cursed atmosphere. And then there are the secrets. Oh, the secrets that only reveal themselves at specific times. The Poe merchant in the ruins of Hyrule Castle Town, the area players can only access as adult Link after Ganondorf has seized power, only conducts business at night. During the day, his shop remains closed, a boarded-up mystery. But when darkness falls, he emerges to buy Poes from brave hunters. This tied the character perfectly to the supernatural theme. Of course, the ghost merchant only works the night shift. Dampy, the graveyard keeper, follows a strict schedule in the Kakariko Village cemetery. During the day, players can find him wandering among the tombstones, discussing his work and the recent mysterious occurrences. But his famous grave-digging tour, where players can win incredible prizes including the hookshot, only happens between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. game time. Miss this window and you can't access one of the game's most memorable side activities. The Big Poe hunting quest, available to adult Link, requires players to find and capture 10 special ghost enemies scattered across Hyrule Field. But these particular Poes only appear at night. Players who exclusively traveled during daylight hours could complete the entire game without ever knowing this side quest existed. Those who explored Hyrule Field after dark discovered glowing spirits that could be captured in bottles and sold for rupees, and eventually a bottle upgrade. Even the fishing pond, that peaceful minigame area, holds secrets tied to the time of day. The sinking lure, an illegal fishing item that makes catching the prize fish much easier, only appears in specific locations at specific times. Veteran players learned to check the pond at different hours, looking for that telltale shimmer in unusual spots. But perhaps the most significant time-based secret involves the sun's song itself. Most players learned this melody from the royal family's tomb in Kakariko Graveyard and used it as a convenient way to skip night cycles or instantly trigger dawn. Simple utility, right? Wrong. The sun's song has a hidden effect most players never discovered. It temporarily stuns Redeads and Gibdos. These terrifying undead enemies freeze in place when they hear the ancient melody, giving players a precious window to escape or attack. This connection between the sun, light, and the power to repel darkness wasn't just gameplay mechanics, it was thematic storytelling. Now let's talk about something that genuinely changed how players experienced Hyrule: the enemy spawns. During daylight hours, Hyrule Field seems relatively safe. A few pea-hats spin lazily in the grass, some style children might pop up if Link stands still too long, but overall, the journey from one location to another feels manageable, even peaceful. Then the sun sets, and Hyrule Field transforms into a gauntlet of horror. Suddenly, everywhere Link walks, style children erupt from the ground. These skeletal warriors don't appear alone. They come in groups, surrounding players and attacking from multiple angles. For young Link especially, these encounters could be genuinely challenging. The style children weren't particularly strong, but their numbers and aggression forced players to either fight constantly or keep moving to avoid getting surrounded. This design choice was absolutely brilliant from a gameplay perspective. The developers wanted Hyrule Field to feel vast and explorable during the day, encouraging players to wander and discover secrets. But at night, that same openness became dangerous. The safe travel routes of daylight turned into threat-filled paths in darkness. Players had to make strategic decisions. Do we risk crossing the field at night? Do we wait until morning? Do we find the nearest safe zone? Death Mountain Trail shows similar day-night enemy variation, though more subtly. The rolling Gorons follow the same paths regardless of time, but their dialogue changes. During the day, they're cheerful and welcoming. At night, they warn Link about increased dangers and suggest he seek shelter. This wasn't just flavor text, it reinforced the game's environmental storytelling. In areas like the Lost Woods and Kokiri Forest, the day-night cycle affected enemy behavior differently. The Skull Kids who attack Link in certain areas of the Lost Woods become more aggressive and numerous after dark. Their attacks deal more damage, and they appear in locations where they weren't present during daylight hours. Players who memorized safe routes through the forest during the day might find those same paths treacherous at night. Even basic enemies like Octoroks in Lake Hylia adjusted their behavior. During daylight, they surface and spit rocks at predictable intervals. At night, they become more erratic, surfacing at unexpected moments and attacking more frequently. These subtle behavioral changes kept players on their toes and prevented pattern memorization from making encounters too easy. But here's where the game's design becomes truly masterful: the psychological impact of nocturnal gameplay. Think about how darkness affects human psychology in real life. We're diurnal creatures, most comfortable and alert during daylight. Darkness triggers primal fears, makes us more cautious, heightens our senses. The developers at Nintendo understood this perfectly. When night falls in Ocarina of Time, visibility decreases, shadows deepen, the view distance shortens slightly. These technical limitations of the Nintendo 64, which struggled with draw distance and fog effects, were turned into deliberate design elements. The reduced visibility at night wasn't a bug, it was a feature that created tension and uncertainty. The audio design amplified this brilliantly. Koji Kondo's soundtrack for Ocarina of Time remains legendary, and the day-night variations in musical themes deserve special recognition. During the day, Hyrule Field's theme is adventurous and heroic, with bright brass and soaring melodies. At night, the music becomes quieter, more ominous, with lower tones and unsettling harmonies. Same location, completely different emotional impact. The sound effects changed too. During the day, players hear birds chirping, wind rustling through grass, the distant sounds of civilization. At night, those cheerful ambient sounds disappear, replaced by cricket chirps, owl hoots, and an overall sense of emptiness. The world sounds lonely after dark, reinforcing the danger and isolation. This psychological manipulation, and yes, that's exactly what it was, calculated psychological manipulation, made players genuinely respect the day-night cycle. It wasn't just a cosmetic feature to be ignored, it fundamentally altered the player's emotional state and tactical approach. Speedrunners and veteran players eventually learned to exploit these systems. They memorized enemy spawn patterns, figured out optimal travel routes for different times of day, and used the sun song strategically to manipulate conditions. But for first-time players, the day-night cycle created genuine tension and meaningful decisions. Do we travel at night and risk combat? Do we wait until dawn? Do we spend our magic using the sun song? Now, let's consider Ocarina of Time's lasting legacy and how its innovations echo through modern gaming. When Ocarina of Time launched in 1998, it instantly set a new standard for three-dimensional action-adventure games, but its influence on day-night cycles and environmental storytelling specifically cannot be overstated. This was the game that proved dynamic time systems could enhance immersion without becoming gimmicky. Look at The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, released just 2 years later in 2000. That game took Ocarina's day-night system and cranked it to 11. Instead of a simple cycle affecting enemy spawns and NPC schedules, Majora's Mask built its entire gameplay loop around a 3-day time limit. Every character in Termina follows intricate, interconnected schedules. The moon grows closer with each passing hour, creating mounting tension. None of that would have been possible without Ocarina of Time's foundational work. The Wind Waker, released in 2003, implemented its own day-night cycle across the Great Sea. While less mechanically complex than Ocarina's system, it maintained that sense of a living world where time passage mattered. Sailing at night offered different encounters than sailing during the day. Islands revealed secrets at specific times. The tradition continued. Twilight Princess in 2006 took inspiration from Ocarina's light versus darkness themes and integrated them directly into the day-night cycle. The twilight-covered areas of Hyrule existed in perpetual darkness until Link cleansed them, creating stark contrasts between corrupted and restored regions. The game's Wolf-Link transformation added another layer. Certain areas and secrets only became accessible in wolf form at night. Skyward Sword in 2011 and A Link Between Worlds in 2013 both featured time-based gameplay elements, though implemented differently. But the DNA of Ocarina's system remained visible, the idea that time should affect the world meaningfully, not just cosmetically. And then came Breath of the Wild in 2017, and everything changed again. Breath of the Wild's dynamic weather and time of day system represents the ultimate evolution of what Ocarina of Time started. The day-night cycle affects enemy behavior, NPC schedules, wildlife patterns, temperature, stealth mechanics, and countless other systems. Players can cook different recipes that boost cold resistance for nighttime mountain climbing or heat resistance for daytime desert exploration. Certain shrine quests only trigger at specific times under specific weather conditions. Enemies grow stronger at night with enhanced vision. The Blood Moon mechanic, where enemies respawn under a crimson sky, creates a supernatural event tied directly to the passage of time. This combines gameplay necessity, respawning enemies and resources, with atmospheric horror and mythological significance. Ganon's malice literally resurrects fallen monsters under the Blood Moon's gaze. But here's the thing. Breath of the Wild's elaborate systems all trace back to Ocarina of Time's fundamental question: what if time passage actually mattered in a game world? That simple premise, executed brilliantly in 1998, rippled forward through decades of game development. Even beyond Zelda, countless games drew inspiration from Ocarina's approach to day-night cycles. The Elder Scrolls series, The Witcher games, Red Dead Redemption, Minecraft, Animal Crossing all featured dynamic time systems where player schedules, enemy behaviors, and world states change based on the hour. Ocarina of Time didn't invent the day-night cycle in games. Earlier titles experimented with it, but Ocarina perfected the formula and demonstrated its potential for deep, meaningful gameplay integration. Let's circle back to some hidden details that even experienced players might have missed. The Kakiri Forest, Link's childhood home, never experiences true night. Even when the game's clock indicates nighttime, the forest remains in a state of perpetual dusk, bathed in soft twilight rather than darkness. Why? The Great Deku Tree's protective magic maintained the forest's eternal youth and innocence. Only after Ganondorf's curse and the Great Deku Tree's death does the forest's lighting become more natural. This subtle environmental storytelling communicated narrative information without a single line of dialogue. The Temple of Time exists in a strange temporal state. Inside the temple, time appears frozen. The lighting never changes regardless of the hour outside. This makes perfect sense thematically. The temple houses the Master Sword, the Door of Time, and serves as the gateway between childhood and adulthood. It exists outside normal time, a sacred space untouched by Hyrule's regular cycles. Players who spent time in the temple might have noticed they emerged to find the exact same lighting conditions as when they entered, no matter how long they stayed inside. Lon Lon Ranch deserves special mention for its day-night routines. Talon, Malin, and Ingo each follow detailed schedules. During the day, Malin sings in the corral, Talon sleeps or works, depending on story progression, and Ingo manages the ranch with varying degrees of competence. At night, the family retires to their house, and the ranch takes on a peaceful, quiet atmosphere. As adult Link, after Ganondorf's rise to power, these routines become corrupted. Ingo's tyranny has disrupted the ranch's natural rhythm, just as Ganondorf disrupted Hyrule's balance. The Market Shooting Gallery in Castletown operates only during specific hours. Players needed to arrive during the owner's business hours to play the minigame and win prizes. This small detail added realism. Of course, the shooting gallery isn't open 24 hours, but it also encouraged players to pay attention to time and plan their activities. Here's a technical detail that showcases Nintendo's brilliance. The game doesn't actually render distant areas during different times simultaneously. When Link travels from one zone to another, the game rapidly calculates what time of day it should be in the new area and loads the appropriate assets. This happens so smoothly that players never notice the transition. The entire world appears to exist concurrently, all areas experiencing dawn and dusk together, but it's actually clever programming magic creating that illusion. The skybox, that dome of sky surrounding Hyrule, cycles through multiple states during each day-night period. Dawn features pink and orange hues, morning brings clear blue, afternoon shifts to warmer tones, sunset explodes with reds and purples, night displays stars and a crescent moon. Each transition was handcrafted by Nintendo's artists to create specific moods. They couldn't rely on realistic atmospheric scattering or dynamic lighting. They had to paint each sky state like a canvas and make the transitions feel natural. And speaking of the moon, did you notice it follows a proper lunar cycle? The crescent moon visible in Ocarina of Time's night sky maintains its shape and position consistently. This attention to astronomical detail wasn't necessary for gameplay, but it added authenticity. Someone at Nintendo cared enough to make sure the moon looked correct. The lens of truth, obtained from the bottom of the well, reveals hidden truths throughout Hyrule. But here's something subtle. Certain illusory walls and fake floors are easier to spot at night due to the different lighting conditions. The shadows fall differently, making the slight shimmer of illusions more visible. Players who explored dungeons at different times might have discovered secrets more easily during specific periods. Weather effects, though limited in Ocarina of Time compared to later games, also tied into the time system. Death Mountain experiences different atmospheric conditions during day versus night. The heat haze effect, visible during daylight hours, disappears after dark, making the mountain slopes clearer but more ominous. One final amazing detail involves the Gossip Stones scattered throughout Hyrule. These ancient Chica artifacts provide hints and information when Link speaks to them or strikes them with his sword, but their dialogue changes based on the time of day. Morning conversations differ from afternoon ones, which differ from evening ones. The Gossip Stones respond to the time, almost as if they're more alert or talkative during certain hours. This tiny detail gave even inanimate objects personality and integration with the world's temporal systems. So what does all this mean? Why does it matter that a 26-year-old game implemented such detailed day-night systems? Because Ocarina of Time proved that environmental storytelling could be subtle, sophisticated, and deeply integrated into gameplay. The developers didn't just add a clock and call it immersive. They thought about every aspect of how time would affect the world: visual, audio, mechanical, narrative, and psychological. This game taught an entire generation of developers that world building means creating systems that interconnect and reinforce each other. The day-night cycle affected enemies, which affected combat, which affected players' psychology, which affected exploration patterns, which revealed secrets, which deepened immersion. Everything connected. Modern open-world games take this for granted now. Of course NPCs follow schedules. Of course enemies behave differently at night. Of course time passage affects the world. But these principles weren't obvious or standard when Ocarina of Time launched. Nintendo had to figure it out, experiment, iterate, and ultimately create something that felt natural and intuitive despite being incredibly complex under the hood. The legacy of Ocarina of Time's day-night cycle isn't just mechanical, it's philosophical. It represents a commitment to treating game worlds as places that exist beyond the player's immediate perception. Hyrule wasn't a static playground waiting for Link to activate it. Hyrule was a living kingdom where time flowed, characters lived their lives, and the world continued regardless of what the player chose to do. That's the real hidden detail most players missed. Not any individual secret or Easter egg, but the revolutionary design philosophy that permeated every aspect of the game. Ocarina of Time respected its world, and respected its players enough to create systems that rewarded curiosity, patience, and observation. 26 years later, players still discover new details about Ocarina of Time. Speedrunners find new exploits that rely on specific time of day conditions. Theorists uncover narrative connections hidden in environmental changes. Casual players experience the magic of Hyrule's living world for the first time. And that's the ultimate testament to the day-night cycle's success. It wasn't just a feature, it was the heartbeat of Hyrule itself, pumping life through every field, village, dungeon, and mountain. The game didn't just ask players to save Hyrule, it made them fall in love with it first, by proving that this world was worth saving. So next time you boot up Ocarina of Time, whether on Nintendo 64, GameCube, Wii, Wii U, 3DS, or Switch, pay attention to the sun and moon. Watch how shadows shift. Listen to how music changes. Notice which characters appear and disappear. Follow the patterns. Because hidden within that 12-minute cycle beating at the heart of Hyrule, there's a masterclass in game design that still teaches us something new every single day and night.